Shared feedback. Okay. So can someone confirm that that's working?
I have this.
Not working.
Here it is.
Good to go? Okay, good. All right, so it's going to have a little bit of a delay, but I'm trying my best. So for just a little bit about me, I'm one of the principal engineers at Domo. Can some of you guys turn your audio down? I said that. Okay, thank you. So I'm focused on front-end code and performance, and I do a lot of user collaboration stuff. That's like where I focus my days. 4 kids, which means it's partly why I'm crazy. And yeah, I love JavaScript. So I don't know what else to say. If you have any questions about who I am, let me know. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into ES6, and I'm going to cover just some stuff because we don't have enough time to cover everything. Hopefully everyone can appreciate that we don't have enough time tonight. Okay, so we're not going to cover generators. We're not going to cover modules, and I'm not going to cover proper tail calls. Okay, I'm not going to cover generators because they're complex and it's tough for sometimes new people to understand. And I didn't want to like spend my time on it. Modules because half of you who use ES6 won't use ES6 modules anyway, and then proper tail calls because it's a little bit advanced. But we're going to talk about everything else. So does anyone here have experience with ES6? Okay. Who here has at least read about it? Okay. And then who here's actually written it as part of an app? Okay, good. All right. So today we're gonna go over some of the things. So I'm just gonna use Babel's website. They have a REPL up there, so you can just type in it, and on the left you type stuff, and it outputs over here on the right. Like so you can kind of see what is it. Like he talked about, it takes ES6 and turns it into ES5. This is so you can kind of see how it's doing that. So you can this is how the browser understands it. So we're gonna do that today. So I want to start by talking about. One second, let me make this guy a little bit smaller. I'll make that guy a little bit bigger. Okay, so we're gonna do let. Does anyone know about variable hoisting? Okay, so with vars, we had this weird thing called variable hoisting. So if I had a function called foo, and better? That's too much, right? Okay, I'm gonna do that because otherwise nothing fits on the screen. Okay, so if I say console.log a, I say var a equals 1. Does anyone know what's gonna happen here? Can't see it. Hide that. So it's gonna log undefined. And because it did that because what JavaScript's doing behind the scenes, and this is with var, it's doing this. It rewrites your code. It's called variable hoisting. Okay, so so it hoists the declaration to the top of the function scope, or if it's a global variable, it hoists it to the top of the global scope. So a lot of people, if you follow Douglas Crockford, you'll know he told you to do this anyway. But it was doing this. Another symptom that a lot of people don't even know JavaScript's doing this. But if you say if true, var a is equal to 1, and then for those of us who come from like Java or C# backgrounds or anything C-based, we think that once I'm outside of that if statement, A is gone because it got locked inside that if statement. So if I do this, like it should throw an error, right? Not going to throw an error. It's going to log 1. Because what JavaScript did was it said var a, it hoisted the declaration to the top of the function, and then I merely set it inside the if statement, and then it's still available outside that if statement. So I don't really have any block scoping currently in ES5. So that's what let is here to fix. So I use let exactly the same way I use var. Okay, that isn't to say you're going to go through your code base and like grep replace var with let, because your app will break. Because even that screwy weird variable hoisting that I just explained, even though you don't want that to happen, your app depends on it happening that way. Like, because you wrote it that way and it's screwy, like, you need to leave it and you have to like responsibly change. But if I say if true, I say let a equal 1, and then I try and console.log a down here. Can't we see this? Show me the console on here. I don't know why. Is that a good size? Okay. So so yeah, this will throw an error because it won't be able to find the A now outside of the block scope. Does that make sense? So you actually have block scoping now, and you have block scoping inside of a while loop as well. So if you say while true, which is an awesome thing to do in your code. If you say that, like, or if you say A, like this will throw an error because it won't be able to find the A. I'm not going to rewrite this. You guys know what I'm saying, right? Like, so it will lock it inside of a while statement. It's going to lock it inside of a for loop. It'll lock it inside of a switch statement as well. So if you have a big case statement and you do a let inside of there, it's also going to lock it in there. Does that make sense? Okay. So another thing, like it's just like let, is if I say let a equal 1, and I console.log a, and then I say a is equal to 2, and I console.log a again. Now it's going to log 2. So that's exactly what you expected it to, right? Because that's how you can do it with var, right? You can reassign it. So that's one thing. Where it will die, where var didn't die, is if I say let a, so I redeclared my let equal 3. And now I say console.log a. Okay, so Babel does the actual transpile time error, but when let is actually implemented in the browser, you'll get an error. You'll get a runtime error if you try and redeclare a variable that's already declared. Okay, so you can't redeclare variables. You can't redeclare with let. With var, we could do that all day long. I could be like var a equals 1, var a equals 1,000. Like var doesn't care. It's all because all the declarations are getting hoisted to the top anyway, right? So they're all just clobbering. They're like rehoisted. Yeah.
So with block scoping, is that where it's hoisted on the block scope?
So I'm not going to talk about what you just asked because it's like, you know that there's nerds on the TC39 because there's this implementation detail called the temporal dead zone, right? That sounds like a friggin' apocalypse thing. But the temporal dead zone, it actually in the background is being hoisted, and if you try and access it, you'll get an error. But yeah, it is being hoisted inside of the block, but they disguise it under the guise of this temporal dead zone thing. So that I'm not going to explain tonight. So if you have more questions about what you just asked, go Google temporal dead zone, and it's not a video game, I promise. Okay, so good question. Yeah.
So you suggest using let always pretty much.
Are you asking that?
Yes.
No, I don't suggest that. I suggest using const. And the reason is because how many times in your apps, like in the node code you just saw that he was writing, he had a bunch of consts, right? Like when you like new up an Express app, right now we just say var app equals the Express app, right? We're never going to change the value of that app. App is always going to be that, right? So you might as well make it a const that you can't reassign, right? So you might as well just be explicit. This variable will not be reassigned. So I am saying you should mostly use const because you're rarely going to reassign variables, right? But yeah, you can use let when you need to. If you're using const on something that's not supposed to be changed, I think what you'll find is when you see a let, you'll know, like, it will give you a little more intuitive understanding of what's happening with that variable specifically.
So you don't use var anymore?
When I write it ES6, I don't use var ever. Yeah. If I was writing it in Chrome today, so I actually skipped this couple steps. If I was writing it in Chrome today, I would use it sometimes. And the reason is because like let works in Chrome. Like I can say let equal 1, right? That's great. But if I try and use destructuring with let, it blows up. So I have to use destructuring with var because they haven't like figured out the implementation details in Chrome today. Does that make sense? I know it's a little wonky, but eventually, okay, I'm going to show it in a second, but eventually Chrome's going to catch up and I can use let with anything. So yeah, I don't use var anymore when I write notes. Yeah. So const is exactly what you think it is. If I do console log a, it's going to log it. If I say equals 2 and I console log that, I don't really like that Babel's doing this because technically I can do this when the browser supports const. I can attempt to reassign const. It's going to fail silently, but I can at least attempt to do it. So the fact that Babel's failing right here when I try and do this, it's not an actual, I don't think that's a correct implementation detail. But you have to read through like the really ugly implementation docs to meet that stuff. Anyway, any questions about const? Yeah, yeah. So let me. So Babel is this tool that it literally just hit its 1-year anniversary. So how big it's gotten in 1 year is like pretty incredible. It was written by a dude in Australia named Sebastian. Now he works for Facebook. Facebook like acquired Babel, and he just tried to make this transpiler that would turn ES6 into something browsers could speak, right? And so he tried to get it as right as he could, but there's a ton of errors. And if I point them out, I'm sorry. It's just because it bothers me. But you can use Babel in your projects. Facebook uses Babel in production. Like big companies use Babel in production. So when I'm pointing out problems, that's just me kind of being a semantic douche. It's not because there's a problem with Babel. Babel's a good thing, and then a lot of people use it, and you could use it in production and probably not have any worries. So yeah, but yeah, is that what you wanted me to say? Okay, cool. All right, so another thing, so any other questions about const? You use it the same as you use var, but you can't reassign it. It still has the same block scoping that let's gonna have. Yeah. The nested stuff, it's not frozen. So the internals of the const is not frozen. So it's just really kind of the main reference is frozen. Yeah, but the references of the pointers inside of it, so the nested stuff is what you're saying, those are not frozen. Yeah, good question. But you can use object.freeze if you want to freeze those. So for anyone who's not familiar, there's a object.freeze and you can pass it a thing and then you can give it a third parameter that will freeze everything nested. But yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Say a
yeah, totally. Yeah. So if I said a is equal to this object, and now I want to say a dot foo is equal to 1. I can mutate internals. I can't mutate the actual pointer itself though. Make sense? Okay. All right. Good questions. So another thing you've been able to do in JavaScript for forever, but it never mattered because of variable hoisting, was if I want to, just for the hell of it, just put down 2 curly braces to create a temporal block, I can totally do that now. And at first they were going to make you do, this let thing, or like they did this because they knew people would say if they wanted a temporal block, they just do if true. So the new developers would just say if this, if true, and then they'd have a temporal block. So they're just like, okay, let's just give them the shortcut, so you just do a block, right? So you can just do a block, and in here, if I say let a equal 1, and I try and log it outside here, it's not going to be able to do it because a is not defined. Make sense? Okay. So that's something you didn't used to be able to do. Yeah. Anyone have a feature they want me to go over next? I'll skip if you guys have a preference. If not, I'm just going to go straight into spread. Is that cool? Okay, so I'm going to I'm going to use this new syntax that we haven't seen. He showed it, but it's called spread, and it's a way to spread out an array. Okay, so let me show you this. So I'm going to say let nums equal this array. Right, so we have an array, true? All right, so now I'm going to say console.log nums, what's going to happen? Console.log is an array of nums, right? So now I'm going to additionally say console.log nums. And what it did there was, instead of logging nums as a whole, it logged nums as its individual pieces. Okay, so it spread that array out and into its individual pieces rather than as an array, a container of individual pieces. Does that make sense what happened right there? That was pretty simple. I didn't really go into it.
Can we like see the
Can you see the what?
Yeah, I was just asking if you can scroll over.
Oh yeah. So it just said console.log that apply console nums and concat nums. Super awesome JavaScript, right? Some of this stuff gets wonky, but it's good to see it so you can know what's going on. The let implementation.
I think you're asking for the output that was to be cut off.
Yeah, I scrolled over so you could.
The console.log.
Oh, you guys can't see that. 1 second. Let me pull this up a little bit.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Can you see that? Okay, there we're good. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. Was that what you were asking? You were asking the ES5? Okay, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to combine a couple of arrays, all right? It's going to be kind of wonky. So we're going to say, so we've got our numbers array, right? So we're going to say let ABCs equal A, B, gosh, I'm so good. Okay, so we got ABC, right? So I'm going to say console.log, and right? So it kind of spread those out in their individual pieces. So if I want to pull those out of an array, we'll log them all individually. But that's how. This is how you can combine two arrays into one now. With you say let x equal this array. Oh, it is called S. Okay. Yeah. So that's how you can combine stuff. That makes sense. Yeah.
What would x equals ellipses nums plus ellipses abs?
X equals that plus this, going to be equal error.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. Because it'd be 1, 2, 3 plus A, B, C. So syntactically it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, and then you can also, this is kind of wonky. If I do this, I can also say console log get nums and get nums, which looks pretty wonky when you look at it because you're like prefixing a function call with 3 dots, but totally legit syntax. I mean, not legit, it's valid, but it's not awesome. But you can do it. So yeah, does that make sense what's going on there? Any questions about spread? You'll use it a couple times. It's not something that you'll use every single day. Okay, anything I want to go over next? If not, I'm going to arrow functions. Okay, so arrow functions is a feature that comes from a couple other languages. It's called lambdas, or in CoffeeScript, they're called fat arrow functions. And don't call them fat arrow functions because they're just called arrow functions. But everywhere you go, people are going to call them fat arrow functions, or they're going to call them rocket functions, or like some stupid name besides arrow functions. They're arrow functions. CoffeeScript had skinny arrow functions and fat arrow functions. A skinny arrow is this, and a fat arrow is this. And the reason they had both is because one bound the internals of the function to this, and the other one just inherited the global this. And so I'll kind of explain which one we adopted. We adopted the fat arrow function, but we're not calling them that, right? We're calling them arrow functions? Okay, cool. We don't want to do any arrow shaming. Okay, so functionally, if I were to say let fn1 equal function return 2. What did I do wrong? That's what I want, right? Okay. And I also say let function 2 equal. Those are the same thing. Okay. So that those get compiled into the exact same version of each other. I don't know why it says R. Oh, because I put R in there. Okay. Here we go. I'm like finger wagging Babel. That's awesome. Okay. So yeah, these are the same thing. So you'll notice that I lost the word function, I lost the word return, and I lost the curly braces. Okay, so these are shorthand functions. There's something else going on, but let me explain that in a second. So sometimes you will need to do the curly braces, okay? So imagine a function that returns an object like name is Aaron, right? Okay, so if I try and do this here, it's going to be so fun. It's going to love it. It's going to know exactly what to do. So it doesn't know what to do. Babel tries to transpile it. It does a solid effort. It doesn't work though, okay? So Babel tried. So I actually have to do a secondary. I have to wrap this whole bloody thing in curly braces to make it happen. And Babel still doesn't get it right. But trust me, this would be valid in actual ES6. Okay, so this is a Babel error. So if you want to return something that's in braces, you actually have to wrap. Oh no, maybe I have to wrap it in parentheses. Yeah, sorry. I have to wrap it in parentheses. Yeah, okay, there we go. Sorry, I had to wrap it in parentheses. So if I wrap it in parentheses, so Babel did get this right. I was like totally making that up. Babel got this right. So if you want to return an object, you have to wrap it in parentheses to make Babel not throw up on it. That make sense? Okay. Because someone out there was going to go try this at home, and they're like, Aaron freaking lied. Like, this doesn't work. It's because you're trying to return an object. Yeah.
So without parentheses, does it work in Chrome? Like, is it just Babel's fault?
No. This is how you'll have to do it in the real world. This is not Babel's fault. That was my fault for saying it was Babel's fault, but it was really my fault. Yeah, sorry. A lot of fault there. Really, no one's to blame, though, really. Okay. So if I want to make a function, like if I want to say let square, which all it does is square a number, and it takes a number like this, and I say that, and I say a times a. And I can say console.log square 3 or 4, right? So it's multiplying the parameter coming in, and yeah. So there's a lot of wonkiness out there. So there's some, like if I were to give this 2 of these things, like if I were to say A and B, at that point, if I have 2 arguments in my function, I don't have to include this. Babel thinks that I do, but I don't have to. But you should just always include it. Oh no, wait, I lied. If it's just 1, you don't have to include it. But if it's none, I have to have it. And if it's more than 1, I have to have it. But if it's just 1, I technically could just do that. But just to be cool, just always put the bloody things in there. Make sense? Okay, cool. Any questions about this so far? One problem where Babel will never be able to get this right. Well, not never. It doesn't have it right today though. Like, so if I say let foo, it's capitalized, so obviously that's a constructor class. That's a constructor function. If I say let that equal name and then so if like I try and treat this as a constructor function, And then I say let b equal new foo. Say again. What did that do? Oh, yeah, I don't know why I did this. Yeah, if I try to make this a constructor function, technically it will let me do it. Okay, so like I was able to new up a foo, but an arrow function in the real world, when it's actually implemented, doesn't have a prototype, so I can't call new on it. It's just like an empty container function with its prototypeless, and I can't extend it. I can't override the this on it. Like the this is bound to it contextually. So that is one other thing about an arrow function. And because I don't have a this, because the this is bound, you know how there's some functions where you can be like function.call and you can like force a different context into it? You can't do that with arrow functions. So there's no like, so if I have this function 2 up here, if I wanted to say function2.call, pass it an empty object. And that's not a thing I should be able to do. And you won't be able to do that when arrow functions are actually implemented. Babel's letting me, but that doesn't mean that's because I can do it. And so this is one of my gripes with Babel, is because we're going to do all this stuff that's not okay. And then one day we have in our heads we're going to turn Babel off. You totally can't turn Babel off once you're on it. So that's like one of the reasons why I'm not super into Babel, but I do love what it brings us, because you're never going to be able to turn it off. You're always going to have to be stuck to it, because it lets you do all these things that aren't actual implementations. So, okay. Yeah.
So why are is it just a syntax?
So it's short. Has anyone here ever written D3? Has anyone here? Okay, one guy. Has anyone here ever done Lodash or underscore? Okay. Has anyone ever here done like a ton of jQuery where you just have a bunch of callbacks? Okay. So in those languages, you often have a callback function that just has one line of code in it, right? And so like sometimes you'll have like 40 lines of that, and it's madness. So arrow functions syntactically give you a shorter function for that purpose, like because you can just put it all in one line. But and I didn't actually bring an example of it. But has anyone in their code ever tried to do like this.foo, but because it's in a nested function, it doesn't know who this is anymore? Like it thinks this is the window or something, and it's like, this doesn't have a foo, and you're like, the foo's right there. So you have to do some stupid thing. You either have to say var me equals this, and you have to change your this.foo to me.foo, or you have to bind foo to the this. Okay, arrow functions automatically bind to whatever the this was when they were evaluated. So there's no more var me equals this. Like it just will be bound to it. Okay. So that's the other thing about this. Like when I say you can't override the this, it's because that's one of the features, is it binds to this. You can't override the this. You can't call or apply a new one into it. Like it just is that.
So how do you use arrow functions?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. No, not for everything, because it doesn't make sense. If you need to talk to, if you don't want this to be bound, you don't use it. But if you're doing D3 and stuff, yeah, all the time, man. Or if you're doing a bunch of like anything with a callback that's just one line. Yeah, but a class. So yeah, I'll get to classes have shorthand for property functions, but yeah, I don't do it for that. You wouldn't do it like you wouldn't say like foo.prototype equals in the narrow function. You wouldn't do that. That's another thing you would do, because it would bind the prototype function to the global this, which would be stupid to do. So yeah, yeah, you don't use it for everything. That's why I'm trying to explain the intricacies of it, because you do use it for some things. But if you're ever going to do something with this, you may or may not want to use it. Okay, you kind of have to play around with this function to figure out. You need to dork with it to figure out when you do and when you don't. I don't have enough time to like explain it in detail, because I have like an hour and we have like 15 features we have to cover. So like I gave a class on this. It lasted 8 hours. So we have an hour. Like there's not enough time. So, but those are good questions. I will promise you, if you try and figure out some of those with the Babel REPL, you're not going to get your answer. Sorry. Like Babel will give you the wrong answer. So anyway, okay, I'm going to move on to default values. So in the past, if I had this awesome function, my function, and it took in a name and an age, right? We always had to do at the top of our function, we had to do this thing where we say name is equal to name or default name, right? We've always had to do this. And age is equal to age or we do something like this. Age, otherwise 0, right? So like we would do things like this, right? And I call this data proofing, and we all do it. Everyone who wrote JavaScript today did this, and that's fine. But there's a new way to do it now. So I can say up here in my method signature, I can say equals default name, and age is equal to. Should the default age be 21? So we can go to went over. Okay. Yeah. 12. Did I say 12? See, you can tell I don't test. Okay. All right. So that's how you do it. That's how you do a default values. Easy, right? We just clean up the method signature. Now let's go ahead and try and get these two assigned, just so you guys can see when they will trigger and when they won't trigger. So I'm just gonna change this to that, and we're gonna say Mountain Dew, right? Who here doesn't agree with that? No one, right? Okay. So we'll say console.log best is equal to name, right? And we'll say my function Coke. Sorry guys, I'm like on a roll tonight. All right, so best is Coke. Not true. But if I say my function and I do an empty string, you guys think, what do you think is going to happen when I do empty string? Mountain Dew? Not Mountain Dew, because technically that's an object. Yeah, it won't. So when you talk about default parameters, default values, there's this triggering event that's going to happen, and it only happens in certain scenarios. And it's only when it's undefined. So if I say, or it's sometimes faulty. So if I say my function null, didn't work. It didn't fail, right? That's not what you thought was going to happen, right? What if I say my function undefined? What's going to happen? It did work, right? What if I say my function? That's also going to work, right? So you can't see it. Anyway, it's there. Okay, so there's sometimes when the triggering will happen, and there's sometimes when it won't. And it's really only when it's undefined. Like explicitly passing null will bypass that trigger. Okay? All right. Any questions? No? Okay. So let me show you one more thing. If we want to, we can also say get default name. I think it's a function get default name, and this can go to a date local storage or whatever, return. You can also do a function call in there, right? Yeah. So you can also make it a function call. That's all I was trying to show. Any other questions? No. Like if I want to say 2 + 2, that would die. So like, yeah, equals 2 + 2. What? All right, I'm calling BS on that, but if you hate freedom, yeah, you can totally. 21. Yeah. Friggin' return the function itself. It didn't call it. So that's exactly what you wanted it to do. Can I execute it? Can I call name? I don't even want to try because I don't know if it's Babel letting me or if it actually will let me call it in the real world. How much fun is live coding? Yeah, it actually let me call it. I can call it.
Oh, I thought in the default parameters.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay. Maybe oh, is that what it was? Yeah, you can. What? Kill yourself now. Okay. Yeah. All right. Default values. He got excited. I threw up. That's what just happened. All right. Okay. Yeah. So one other thing that you didn't expect is wait, hold on. So I'm actually going to show you this. 1 second, because it wasn't intuitive to me at first. Name age equals 21. I got it right. Okay. So if I say console.log arguments, and I say console.log name age, that's awesome. It doesn't actually show us down here. Oh, I have to call it. Okay. So for the arguments, you showed me object, which it's not. So what I was trying to show you is the default value is not included in the object. So see right here how I called foo and I didn't pass it anything? The arguments object will just be empty. It won't have anything. However, 21 will get logged. Okay, so the default value is not in the arguments object itself. So if you're trying to do default values and arguments, it's fun. Like you're gonna have some screwy things you didn't expect. So just know the triggering of the default value is not gonna appear, the value they got to return is not gonna appear inside your arguments object. But in a second, I'm gonna show rest parameters, which may make you not want to use arguments anymore. Okay, all right. And I think that's all I had. Oh, you can't use this with rest parameters, which I'll show in a second. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Any other questions? No? Am I running out of time?
No, so we go to 8:30.
Yes. Can we go to 9? I mean, I'm just going to keep going, or how does that work?
I'll stop you in about 10 minutes.
Okay. And then I just keep going when you stop me, or? All right. Okay, destructuring. All right. So we're going to write a function called, we're going to write get address. Okay, and it's just going to return name. No, it's going to return city, Lehigh, state, Utah, zip 84043. Okay, so that's all that get address does. Okay, so now I'm going to use destructuring. Okay, I'm actually going to bump this down so you can get it out of the way. Does anyone have any questions about what get address does? Awesome. That's exactly how many hands we should have seen. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm going to put curly braces on the left-hand side of the equal sign now. Okay. Let's say let city, state, and zip equal get address. Okay. And I'm going to say console.log city, state, zip. Okay. So I pulled that apart. At the top of your functions, along with data proofing, which I already showed you with default values, how many of you spend like all day pulling in the incoming options apart, right? Like we do that. That's another thing that we spend the top of our functions doing. And so this is going to allow you to have a shorthand on top of that. Okay. So now if you need to pull apart the incoming objects, this is how you'll do it. And it works with arrays too, which I'll show in a second. But yeah. So it's the first time you're going to have braces on the left-hand side of the equals. We've never had that before. If I want to alias city though, like let's say I don't want to call that city. It's called city in the object that's coming in, but I don't want to call it that. So if I want to do it, I just say C, and then I change that to C. Okay, so that's the other way. That's how you can alias your thing. Come again?
Like only two properties, like partial destruction. Like
So if I only wanted to do this, yeah, you can totally do that. If you try and pull out not real, not real, and I try and cut along that. Where are we? I don't know what's happening there. It's weird. I don't know if that's I don't think that's what will happen in real life, but it may. I think you're gonna get an error if you try and pull something out that's not there. But it's not right here. But that doesn't mean that's how it will work. That just means that's what Babel does. So I tried to pull not real out of it. So I'm gonna give a little bit of background on this thing. This functionality has had a major overhaul like 3 times. They changed it big time, even as late as just in February. Like it was majorly. They used to have all these patterns, like this whole left-hand side used to be this big pattern, and there was all this discussion about refutable and irrefutable patterns. And refutable meant you didn't like if I tried to say not real and it's not there, it didn't die because it's refutable. Like it didn't have to be there. But if it was irrefutable and I tried to pull it out, but it would freak out and like do a runtime error. So like there was all this discussion about really complicating up this pattern over here on the left hand side, and it was wonky. And everyone was just gonna they were just gonna say the whole thing is freaking refutable. They were just gonna always destructure with a question mark at the beginning because that's how you said the whole thing is refutable, all the way nested inside of it. So everyone was just gonna do that. So they backed off of it and said it's just refutable by nature. So I think you may get undefined, but they changed it so many times. It's honestly, I kind of have like a hole in my head on what's going to happen when this actually gets implemented. It may just do an undefined though.
So if you think about it as an object, right? If you reference get address dot not real, that's going to be undefined.
Totally, right? But the destructuring pattern, like before I'm saying with the refutable and the irrefutable, like without a question mark, that's irrefutable. And if it's not there, it's going to blow up. So I'm trying to remember how when they ripped all the refutability and irrefutability out, like what they ended on. So it may just be undefined. It may throw an error. I'm honestly not sure at this point. Okay, good questions though. Any other questions before I keep going? Nested? You want to do nested? Okay, let's do that. So let's do name, Aaron, age, how old am I? And then we'll do address. I screw up? Huh? Oh, yeah, good call. Okay, so this is now Aaron. So that's how we get a person now. Like it's now going to return a person. So if I want to destructure now down into the address and get the city and state back out, I can say address, and I can say city, C, and state. And that'll pull it out like that. So it's a very simple pattern. That's how you get nested down inside of there. However, I will say, one thing you're going to say is, did address destructure? Didn't. Just use address as as a path to get down inside of it. It didn't actually make a variable called address, which was the next question someone was about to ask. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple things combined right now. Oh, wait, Control Z. It may melt your brains. It won't, but it may. Okay, so we're going to do this. Motherfucker. Okay. I'm trying to think that what's the best way to show this. Let's just make a function called fun, and we're going to say name Mikey. Is your name Mikey? Is that the child version? Did I do it right? Okay. And so we got destruction right there, right? And we're just going to say city and address, colon, city, state, zip. And we'll do just alias. That's kind of a wonky function header, right? But in that one header, we've got default values and destructuring. So like the top 15 lines of my function are all like encapsulated up inside the signature now. So the data proofing is all happening up there. The pulling the pieces apart is all happening in there. And like, let's say I want to make the whole thing, because right now I have to call this with an object, right? But if I call it with no object, it's still not going to work. So if I want to make the whole pattern use these default parameters, I just do this empty object, and then I'll get my defaults out of there. Like, so that's how you can make it truly where I can pass nothing into it. So if I call this right now, console.log, name and zip. So if I say fun, oh yeah, sorry, that's supposed to be equals, yeah. I have two names. So I freaking F this up pretty good somehow. Oh, city. Yeah, that's age. Sorry. There we go. How's that output though? Right? Legit. Okay. So it's freaking out because it can't find city in there. So if I'm gonna have to give him a default parameter of Provo, and state is gonna have to be Utah, and zip Z is gonna have to, and I don't even know how to do that. Equals as city, still not defined.
There's a column there next to the equals from zip.
So address is undefined.
Oh yeah, address is undefined, huh? So now I have to default address. Come on. Yeah, so not. But anyway, if I wanted to make address default, now I gotta like put an equals next to that thing. Anyway, it gets wonky. Does everyone understand what the hell I was trying to do?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do it. We're gonna be here all night like fixing this freaking pattern. Okay, but what I was trying to get at is it's all up in the signature now. So your signatures contain all that data proofing, and like you know exactly where to go to see what's happening. Questions? Good to go. The output in Babel is super user friendly. So if you have any questions, give up on life. Okay. All right, that's destruction. Let me show arrays real quick. So if I say let nums equal 1, 2, 3, and then I want to say let so let 1, 3 console.log 1, 3. Oh, sorry. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so that's how you destruct an array. You just put the variable name in the index that you want it to be. Makes sense? So if let's say nums over here had another array, which was 4, 5, 6, and I wanted to keep destructuring, I just keep the pattern going. Right? So like that's how you destructure an array. It's not super difficult. It's useful for like a couple things. So if I say let A equal 1 and B equal 2, now I can say BA equals AB. And what's going to happen here? Yeah, so switch the values, switch the places. Normally to switch the values, you have to have a third variable in there. Like you have to like make a C and you have to like swap them that way. This makes it for shorthand on variable swapping, which hardly anyone does, right? Right up there with the Fibonacci. So, but it is a thing you can do. So yeah, yeah. I don't know if there's any other questions about destructuring you guys want me to do. I showed you nested on both arrays and objects. Yeah. Can I destructure based on index? I just did that, so I don't understand the question. What do you mean? Zero. So like so an array has indexes of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But that's not a valid variable name. Like I can't say var1. Like that's like it's a number. So
you want something, you want a subset of the array based on do you want the third bit item in an array, but you don't know for sure if you want the third bit or
no. I mean, you'd have to catch all the ones that it might be, and then have fun figuring out the one that you want to pick. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I have this piece of code that I copied because I don't remember why I wrote it.
Yeah, we have probably time for one more concept.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so like I spread some things into some things. Like a reverse spreading. I knew you guys would love that. So like so I'm like destructuring this array over here, right, which is my name. So that's what we are destructuring. And I'm going to destructure the A into X, the Y, or the second A into Y, and then I'm going to zip the rest of them up into Z. And then when I log it, you can see I got A, and then it zipped the other three up inside of an array. That's another thing that I hadn't showed you how to do. I don't know if you'll ever do that, but you might. That actually might be the most useful thing we've talked about with spread so far. Okay, that's spread. My man cut me off. I didn't even get to go into classes or REST, which I don't think you'll care about REST. I didn't get to go into template strings, which are kind of cool. I didn't get to go into maps or sets or weak maps. The coolest of those probably being maps and weak maps. Maps are like powerful JavaScript objects. You know how when you create a JSON object, you just have like a key and a value, and the key is just a string? Even if you make the key a number 0, it converts 0 into a string. And so your key is always a string. True? Okay, so imagine if your key could be another object. So imagine if the key was like a user. Like let's say I had a bin of tasks, and I wanted to make a key like someone's user ID. I don't have to make it user ID anymore. I can make it the actual user object itself. So so objects can be keys now. Now, the immediate thing that we're all thinking is memory leaks. Like, what if I stop having a pointer to that key, but that map's still pointing at the key? So I'm going to leak memory. That's what a weak map is. If you use an object as a key inside of a weak map, and then you lose all your other pointers, and the only thing stopping it from being garbage collected is this weak map. The weak map lets you go too. So that's the only thing about a weak map. So weak maps are actually pretty cool too. I didn't get to show you classes, and weak maps combined is actually how you get true private variables in JavaScript classes. So with weak maps, and you could do this with prototypes. It's not a feature of classes. You could do this with prototype classes too. But with weak maps, you can actually have true private variables that are private to your, like, internals of your class only. Like, externals can't get into them. So I didn't get to show that, but there's a lot of really cool stuff. So I encourage everyone to get out there and kind of play around with them and to get to know them. Because can I show one last thing? Okay. So one thing we didn't show at any point tonight was this thing. So this is called, I'm going to blow it up a little bit. This is called the ECMAScript compatibility table. So if I want to see what are the browsers, how are they compatible with ECMAScript 5, this is what you hoped you'd see, like, right? Everything's green, everyone's happy. A couple things down here aren't, but that's expected. When you go to ES6, it's not as, like, awesome yet, right? But when you look at, like, what of these platforms have the most support, Edge is leading, which is, like, shocking. Once people start using it, it will be awesome. So, but so Babel for the longest time, like, I'm showing you guys this. It's a little weird because Babel's not the leader right now. Edge and Firefox are the leaders, but those are recent developments. Babel for the longest time had the most amount of ECMAScript 6 implemented, which is why you had to code Babel. And even though Firefox is beating it, Chrome and the old IE still aren't. So Babel is still, like, your best bet if you're trying to reach all browsers, because it or something like Tracer, which doesn't have as much coverage, but in my argument, Tracer's it's more semantically correct in its output. Some of the errors I showed you with Babel don't happen in Tracer, but Tracer has more functionality. So it's like, what do we do? But yeah, so if you look at Firefox, though, today on Firefox 43, they're up to 72%, which is like a new development. So they just passed Babel, which is awesome. Chrome is at 65, which is cool for all of us who care and who write Node, because it means we're getting more features into Node. And then Edge, where was it? Right here. Yeah, Edge is leading with 80%. So if you ever want to see how things work, this is where you can come. Like, if you want to see the current progress, this is kind of the state of things, which you were all pretty excited, and this should sober you up a little bit to realize it's going to be a couple years till you're going to use this stuff in your browser without something like Babel. If you're writing Node, a lot of it you can already use today. Like, if I pop open this console in Chrome and I say let A equal new week map, I can totally do that. Like, so a lot of it already exists, but it doesn't exist in the old IEs. So if you have to support all the old IEs, you have to use polyfills for the weak map, which I don't think there might not be polyfills for weak map. There are polyfills for the map and for the set and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, there's a lot more stuff to talk about. We ran out of time, but if I'll be here after if anyone has any more questions, if you want to come up and chat about this stuff. So thanks.